This is the Wikipedia page for Dancing Mania, Part 2 of 2. You're listening to the podcast where we read Wikipedia articles every day and provide commentary. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and consider donating at patreon.com/WikiListen podcast so we can continue to create this show. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at WikiListen and at wikilisten.com. Welcome to WikiListen. I'm Victor Varnado, KSN, and this is Rachel Teichman, LMSW.
Hey.
Hi, Rachel.
Hey.
All right. Characteristics. The outbreaks of dancing mania varied, and several characteristics of it have been recorded, generally occurring in times of hardship. Up to tens of thousands of people would appear to dance for hours, days, weeks, and even months. Women have often been portrayed in modern literature as the usual participants in dancing mania, although contemporary sources suggest otherwise. Whether the dancing was spontaneous or an organized event is also debated. What is certain, however, is that the dancers seem to be in the state of unconsciousness and unable to control themselves. In his research into social phenomenon, author Robert Bartholomew notes that contemporary sources record that participants often did not reside where the dancing took place. Such people would travel from place to place, and others would join them along the way. With them, they brought customs and behavior that were strange to the local people. Bartholomew described how dancers wore strange, colorful attire and held wooden sticks. Robert Marks, in his study of hypnotism, notes that some decorated their hair with garlands. However, not all outbreaks involved foreigners, and not all were particularly calm. Bartholomew notes that some paraded around naked and made obscene gestures. Some even had sexual intercourse. Others acted like animals and jumped, hopped, and leaped around. They hardly stopped, and some danced until they broke their ribs and subsequently died. Throughout, dancers screamed, laughed, or cried, and some sang. Bartholomew also notes that observers of dancing mania were sometimes treated violently if they refused to join in. Participants demonstrated odd reactions to the color red. In A History of Madness in 16th century Germany, Mildefort notes they could not perceive the color red at all, and Bartholomew reports it was said that dancers could not stand the color red, often becoming violent on seeing it. Bartholomew also notes that dancers could not stand pointed shoes and that dancers enjoyed their feet being hit. Throughout, those affected by dancing mania suffered from a variety of ailments, including chest pains, convulsions, hallucinations, hyperventilation, epileptic fits, and visions. In the end, most simply dropped down, overwhelmed with exhaustion. Middlefort, however, describes how some ended up in a state of ecstasy. Typically, the mania was contagious, but it often struck small groups such as families and individuals. Tarantism. In Italy, a similar phenomenon was tarantism, in which victims were said to have been poisoned by a tarantula or scorpion. Its earliest known outbreak was in the 13th century, and the only antidote known was to dance to particular music to separate the venom from the blood. It occurred only in the summer months. As with dancing mania, people would suddenly begin to dance, sometimes affected by a perceived bite or sting, and were joined by others who believed the venom from their own bites was reactivated by the heat of the music. Dancers would perform a tarantella accompanied by music, which would eventually cure the victim, at least temporarily. Some participated in further activities, such as tying themselves up with vines and whipping each other, pretending to sword fight, drinking large amounts of wine, and jumping in the sea. Some died if there was no music to accompany their dancing. Sufferers typically had symptoms resembling those of dancing mania, such as headaches, trembling, twitching, and visions. As with dancing mania, participants apparently did not like the color black, and women were reported to be most affected. Unlike dancing mania, tarantism was confined to Italy and Southern Europe. It was common until the 17th century, but ended suddenly with only very small outbreaks in Italy until as late as 1959. A study of the phenomenon in 1959 by religious history professor Ernesto de Martino revealed that most cases of tarantism were probably unrelated to spider bites. Many participants admitted that they had not been bitten, but believed they were infected by someone who had been, or that they had simply touched a spider. The result was a mass panic with a cure that allowed people to behave in ways that were normally prohibited at the time. Despite their differences, tarantism and dancing mania are often considered synonymous. Reactions. As the real cause of dancing mania was unknown, many of the treatments for it were simply hopeful guesses, although some did seem effective. The 1374 outbreak occurred only decades after the Black Death and was treated in a similar fashion. Dancers were isolated and some were exorcised. People believed that the dancing was a curse brought about by Saint Vitus. They responded by praying and making pilgrimages to places dedicated to Saint Vitus. Prayers were also made to Saint John the Baptist, who some believe also caused the dancing. Others claim to be possessed by demons or Satan. Therefore, exorcisms were often performed on dancers. Bartholomew notes that music was often played while participants danced, as that was believed to be an effective remedy. And during some outbreaks, musicians were even employed to play. Middlefort describes how the music encouraged others to join in, however, and thus effectively made things worse, as did the dancing places that were sometimes set up. Theories. Numerous hypotheses have been proposed for the causes of dancing mania, and it remains unclear whether it was a real illness or a social phenomenon. One of the most prominent theories is that victims suffered from ergot poisoning, which was known as St. Anthony's fire in the Middle Ages. During floods and damp periods, ergots were able to grow and affect rye and other crops. Ergotism can cause hallucinations and convulsions, but cannot account for the other strange behavior and most commonly identified with dancing mania. Other theories suggested that the symptoms were similar to encephalitis, epilepsy, and typhus, but as the ergotism, those conditions cannot account for all symptoms. Numerous sources discuss how dancing mania and tarantism may have simply been the result of stress and tension caused by natural disasters around the time, such as plagues and floods. Heathington and Munn describe dancing mania as a result of shared stress. People may have danced to relieve themselves of the stress and poverty of the day, and in so doing attempted to become ecstatic and see visions. Another popular theory is that the outbreaks were all staged, and the appearance of strange behavior was due to its unfamiliarity. Religious cults may have been acting out well-organized dances in accordance with ancient Greek and Roman rituals. Despite being banned at the time, these rituals could be performed under the guise of uncontrollable dancing mania. Justus Hecker, a 19th century medical writer, described it as a kind of festival where a practice known as the kindling of the Nodvi was carried out. This involved jumping through fire or smoke in an attempt to ward off disease. Bartholomew notes how participants in this ritual would often continue to jump and leap long after the flames had gone. It is certain that many participants of dancing mania were psychologically disturbed, but it is also likely that some took part out of fear or simply wished to copy everyone else. Sources agree that dancing mania was one of the earliest recorded forms of mass hysteria and describe it as a psychic epidemic with numerous explanations that might occur for the behavior of the dancers. It has been suggested that the outbreaks may have been due to cultural contagion triggered in times of particular hardship by deeply rooted popular beliefs in the region regarding angry spirits capable of inflicting a dancing curse to punish their victims. I think this is probably my favorite Wikipedia page.
What makes it your favorite?
It's just a really strange story, and I love it. And I like the illustration on it, which is just a creepy drawing of people dancing. This is the best.
I like it a lot too, but I'm also struggling with it as a form of some sort of diagnosable condition. Like, I have so many more questions that will probably never be able to be answered in a satisfactory way.
This has been part 2 of the Wikipedia page for Dancing Mania. Thanks for listening to WikiListen. To support the show, go to patreon.com/WikiListen podcast and find us on social media at WikiListen and at wikilisten.com.